graduated, elevated. Now it's my time to shine, yeah, let's go. Major moves, power moves, take it to the top one time non-stop.
Hello and welcome to Ph.D. Hardtalk. Thank you so much for wanting to have a discussion with me and to share your knowledge with the world. Could you please introduce yourself, what you're doing for your PhD, and then we can crack on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor. My name is AJ Bravo. I'm a researcher based in the University of Kent here in, the lovely Garden of England. And my research is about pornography and censorship. And it's particularly trying to highlight positive aspects of pornography, how pornography helps people pay their bills, how it helps queer people find a way of expressing themselves and find a way of finding community, and how censorship affects both artists and sex workers alike.
So to move on to your research then.
Yes.
Which I think, oh my gosh, I am excited.
Such sexy research, I know. I know.
I am feeling like, I'm excited. So can you just touch on the title and then we can carry on?
Absolutely. Let me read the title because, again, I have the attention span of a squirrel and it's not good, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So the title is Graphic Approaches, an Experimental Theoretical Analysis of Pornographic Creation. I know. Very intense. It's very,
Very exciting as well.
Very exciting. So. I wanted to kind of like have a title that legitimated the fact that I'm studying porn, because a lot of people is like, oh, you're studying porn, ha ha ha. Cue the laughs and all the kind of like smarmy comments, and it's like,
this is actually, the thing is, I believe when it comes to business, right, we can take drugs, we can take sex, we can take trafficking of men, women, is it the hearts, the black market? There's everything out there. So we as scientists, our job is to understand and to bring it to light, to educate.
Absolutely.
That's why we're in PhD Hardtalk. So when it comes to your research then, how does it benefit the community? Let's start there.
Okay, so I'm a big believer because, I did sex work back in the day. So this is a very kind of like near and dear to my heart topic. And the reason for this PhD is actually to have a philosophical defense for people that say that pornography needs to be censored, that sex workers need to be deported, that we need laws put in place to prevent it from happening at all. So this is kind of like my way to give back to the sex working community who has done so much for me so many times, that, I just wanted to be able to give something back. So pornography, I think, benefits the queer community immensely, and the female femme community as well, because you have all the kind of like heteronormative porn that, boys watch, what have you. But actually, if you go and look at pornography, you will find so many more big bodies, black bodies, trans bodies, all kinds of diversity, much more than in any Vogue or Elle magazine. Yeah. And like, there's no other industry in which women make more than men.
Oh, is
it? It's fucked up. This is very fucked up that the only way that you make more money than a guy is by objectifying your own body. And we can have like a conversation about that, right? Yeah. But pornography for me, it has taught me so much. It has taught me to have agency over my own body. It has taught me that there were other people that had the same fetishes and kind of like interests as me, and that there wasn't anything wrong with that, coming from a Catholic background. Yeah. That was massive for me, the idea that if you wanted to tie someone up, there may be someone who's into that. You're not a freak.
Tie me up.
That kind of stuff. So when I came into like BDSM, which is also very tied into my research, obviously, I was a young girl and I was finding all these men and they all wanted to dominate me.
Just a quick one. BDSM, what does it stand for? Because someone else might not know.
Yeah, sorry. I'm here spitballing all the terms. Bondage, domination, sadism, and masochism. It's a set of practices that is based around like power play. So the idea is that you will have a dominant and a submissive, or 15 dominants and 15 submissives. If you like numbers, up to you. We're not shaming anyone here. You could also have like a top or a bottom. So the idea, so of course, a lot of like BDSM literature, you know, I'm sure you all have heard of 50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, I was about to say at the end, I was going to say 50 Shades of Grey, go and watch it.
Exactly. So I don't think that's a great, like, I have a love-hate relationship with 50 Shades of Grey, because on one hand, I think that it opened up so many people's minds to the idea of BDSM and BDSM not being something shameful. And like, I remember I was having this conversation with my aunt, and she was like, I read 50 Shades and I didn't know that like a man could give you oral sex. And I was like, you what now? You didn't know? I was shocked. But yeah, so, you know, this book, as you know, and in the BDSM community, we don't like it because it's not a good or a realistic portrayal of how you should handle these dynamics. But that's kind of like getting mad at, you know, any romantic comedy for not being a good representation of romance. I mean, yeah, of course. You know, and I do think that the author could have done like a better job at representing so many things. But again,
it was all commercial though. It wasn't an educational piece. I know someone who's looking at similar research as you. She's at Derby University. She's in her 3rd year, and she's a psychology student. And her name is Catherine. So literally, you can
lovely.
Contact with her.
I'd love to connect.
So she's BDSM. So it's quite interesting. So that's why I was excited to like.
So, you know, as a young woman coming to the BDSM scene in Spain, which is a very Catholic, very patriarchal country, everyone wanted to dominate me, and I was like, I mean, sure, I dig this, but do I dig it, or am I being digged? Like. This is fun, but it's somehow not as fun as I imagined the opposite situation to be. And it took me finding femdom porn and like pornography with women being dominant and all this kinds of stuff. And then I was like, wait a damn minute. This is it. This is the thing. And it, you know, through online pornography and that kind of like community, I found an outlet for sexual expression. And, you know, also, same goes, I'm a bisexual woman.
Yeah.
It's not exactly like you have, especially, you know, I was born in 93, I'm 28 now. We didn't have euphoria back then. Like there weren't a lot of like widely available sapphic narratives, bisexual narratives. So pornography gave me access to all of those things. And as an artist myself, I'm an oil painter. Yeah. And like painting the nude body or the naked body, however you want to say it, it's always been a thing for me. I think it's amazing. And I love, like, for me, one of the main things about this research is the fact that we can have a lot of naked ladies painted in museums, and that is all fine and dandy with everyone. But if I get myself naked and I post pictures of myself in the internet and I charge for them, that won't go into a museum. No. I may be, you know, I'm going to lose my inheritance from my family, were I to have an inheritance, you know, I may be thrown out. There will be stigma that I face. So if I decide to exert that power of objectifying myself or sexualizing myself, I'm punished, especially if I'm making money out of it, because it's under my own rules. But if I were to pose for a man and he were to paint me, he would be celebrated. They've been celebrated for like 2,000 years. So, you know, that as a dominatrix, that don't sit right with me. I'm like, you know, no. We're going to have to change that. That's not cool.
Yeah, I love that. I guess the next question that I have, I mean, we've had her name, Will Smith's wife, I forgot her name,
Jada, yeah.
She said that, you know, at some point on the rent table that she was watching pornography for a long time, and, you know, she was excited about it. And when she would then go to Will, she expected certain things to happen, but Will wasn't doing what was on the internet, and she would want him to do the most, and she wasn't feeling it, and that's what caused issues in terms of their sex life.
Absolutely.
So, in terms of your research then, you know how you said you found it online, do you think that's an accurate representation of, I see it, I think, oh my gosh, that is amazing, I need someone to do that, they come, they do it, I'm like, crap, what was that?
I think that there is such a huge difference in the way that queer people communicate and heterosexual people communicate, and in particular within queer relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just go to your partner. In my experience, like I have quite a wide queer community.
Yeah.
You don't just go to them, right? Mm-hmm. And expect them to do. So if you've been looking at certain kinds of pornography, chances are you are on a forum or on a chat group or on, you know, back in the day on an email group. You would be on meetings before the internet when this was all kind of like on magazines. Queer people go to their community to check, right? Mm-hmm. Like you will be talking about this. You won't be like, I go to my partner, I've just watched a video about choking someone, and I will start choking them out of the blue. That's usually not how that goes. Please do not do that. You know, kids, please don't listen to this, but people, don't do that. This is not cool. So I think that we have a much more kind of like, there's a tendency to communicate more, to discuss sexual activities more. Yeah. And I think that this is key. And this is one of the things that I love about sex work, actually, is that, you know, when a client comes to you, if you're doing kind of like escorting or whatever it is, there will be a discussion of the activities that they want to perform.
Yeah.
That is a very neurodivergent way of looking at sex, which has always, because instead of having all these social cues about, oh, you flirt and you touch and you, before all of that, you've already discussed, what do you want? Yeah. You know, this is my list of things. Which ones do you like? Oh, well, I don't like that much. Let's, you know, you have a whole ass negotiation, and negotiation is also very, very common in BDSM spaces. Okay. So, you know, vanilla people who are starting to kind of like dip their toes into BDSM. Vanilla is what we call people who are not into kind of like alternative sexual lifestyles. Okay. So, you know,
I've learned something.
There you go. So if you're starting to dip your toes into the kind of like BDSM practices, take one page from the BDSM community, discuss the scene before the scene happens. And scene is the word that we use to describe kind of like this very elaborated sexual scenarios. There is a reason why we call it a scene. There is a script.
Because it's theater. It has to be fun. Yeah,
exactly. And how is it going to be fun if we have not agreed on what you want to do? Because, you know, if Jada had gone to Will and she'd been like, I watched this video.
Yeah,
baby, this is it. This is what I want. Watch it. I'm gonna be in the room. I'm gonna be in my lingerie. You come, you know, if you like it, but you cannot just magically expect your partner to read your mind.
That's quite interesting, and I think that's a paper on its own in terms of writing, because, you know, when it comes to relationships, most people, they will say, oh, I have a fantasy, and they will tell you verbally, but to illustrate what it is, they don't, and therefore it never marries together.
Of course. And I mean, I think that, and then, you know, it's, this wasn't quite what I was expecting it to be. I think it's so important, you know, you can use pornography to illustrate. Pornography doesn't always have to be a video. It can be written pornography. It can be a comic book. It can be a fan art. It can be a picture. It can be so many things. It can be photographs. You know, use materials to illustrate your point. If you know, I'm not saying that you do a PowerPoint. I would be very impressed. If anyone wants to come and do a PowerPoint to me about their sexual fantasies, my heart is yours forever. But, you know, just imagine, like, that's my dream, you know, that an Excel sheet. Anyways, It's just, and I think that's kind of like where the queer BDSM neurodivergent community kind of like a Venn diagram overlaps, because all of those communities have a tendency to almost over-explain things. There's also a certain tendency to have very clear communication. This is not to say that these communities are perfect, that abuse doesn't happen in BDSM communities or relationships, that queer relationships are perfect. But I do think that we have kind of like a leg up in a lot of heterosexual relationships, because at least, you know, with all our flaws and our faults, at least we're talking to one another, which helps, like helps a lot.
No, communication is key in any relationship. And I understand that illustration, be it in the workplace with your supervisor, if you don't identify the key points that you take seriously to anybody, they will never understand what it is that you mean. And I understand it now. And I think you've just saved so many relationships. Like, you don't realize you've literally just saved so many relationships. Because some people are laid there thinking, I would love this, but how do I tell him, or how do I tell her?
Just be honest. Look, come on. Are you going to sit here and tell me that if your partner or that person you're seeing, right, came up to you and opened their heart about their fantasies, that's very hot. Like, come on.
You know, when we talked about religion, and we have to remember there's religion, and then there is, you know, in terms of men, they will say, oh, when I get married, I'll never do that, but I'll do it before, you know, I settle in. And then there's some women who are saving themselves for when they get married to start experiencing that. And then he's like, no, and then they end up cheating. Or
oh my God, this is so true. And it's such an interesting point. So slut shaming, right, within the bounds of marriage and within religion. So first of all, sex and religion, very convoluted topic, but I'm of the mind that there's no sexual act that is inherently wrong if it's between two consensual adults. Like, I genuinely do not care how you get your freak on. Enjoy yourself. Do your thing, you know. And I mean, as someone who's very spiritual, I have a very hard time believing that any god would be concerned with how you express your physical affection to one another. But that's just me. With that being said, men, for you, I say, please stop believing in the Madonna versus whore virgin thing. Like, sex is fun if you love your significant other and you are married, and in your religion, sexual union has been blessed between the two of you. Explore yourselves. Don't deny yourselves the amazing things that you could be doing with one another because you feel like certain activities are for sluts only. That's not the point. Like, you know, it's your wife is it's not a different person. As a woman, you don't lose value for performing certain sexual acts or for enjoying certain sexual acts. You will never lose value for that. You may lose value for, you know, abusing people, being unkind, not tipping your servers, that kind of stuff. But you will never lose value for doing certain sexual acts or enjoying sex. So men, stop upholding this view that women who do certain sexual acts are sluts and women who don't do them are your wives. Because first of all, you're missing out on a lot of amazing sex. I'm just saying. And second of all, it's not good for anyone. Women deserve to enjoy themselves in bed too. And women, please enjoy yourselves. Do yourselves a favor. You know, one of the reasons why I love pornography so much is because if you're a woman, there's not a lot of narratives about how do you seek your pleasure, how do you find your pleasure, what do you enjoy, what do you not. You're supposed to enjoy, you know, a lot of kissing, a lot of like external stimulation, but you're not supposed to enjoy rough sex. You're not supposed to enjoy, I don't know, not being kissed or certain weird things. You're not supposed to enjoy giving oral sex to people. Watch some porn, figure out what makes you bust.
Do your research.
Exactly. Do your research. Ladies, please do your research. Like, and come prepared. Do your PowerPoints.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it. I think the PowerPoint is a thing. Have your KPIs literally for the
Exactly.
month.
Look, this
Let's know
quarter,
yeah.
we are reaching at least one orgasm per session. And if we are not reaching it, we're going to have a review.
Literally, maybe 3.
There you go. Exactly. Be ambitious, ladies.
Branding. So do you know what? I had a conversation with Kyle a few weeks ago, and his research, it links and ties in nicely. His is looking at men's cruising strategies and the surveillance of public sex. So what he explained to me was that men who are, I don't know what the right terminology is, gay still the right terminology?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, some people identify as gay, some people identify as queer. There's a bunch of terms, but you can still use gay.
So gay, queer, and bisexual, they go, because they have fantasies basically, right? And they go on Tinder and other sex,
apps,
yeah. And they state, meet me at this park and let's do A, B, C, D. And they do it. So the police get involved, they pick them up because it's public indecency. And some of them, they are married. There's ways of communicating. Allegedly, he was educating me that, they'll be with their partner and they'll wink and they'll go into the toilet, do what they need to do and come out, because the person that's sat next to them doesn't really fulfill the urges. And, he said it's a thing and it happens, globally, but it's still hidden behind closed doors. So based on your research and your knowledge in terms of the subject itself, because I think it does interlink.
Oh, for sure.
Would you say that the problem is communication and listening and being scared of your partner that triggers all of this?
I think that there are two problems. One is the environment and the other one is the communication, right? Okay. So because we live in an environment, so for example, in the BDSM world, you will find men who have gained permission from their wives because their wives do not want to get involved in BDSM. They are mostly submissive men, and they will come to you as a dominatrix for for their fill of their particular fantasies, blah, blah, blah. And of course, a lot of men haven't had the discussion with their wives, which is not cool, not very nice, I have to say. But the idea is these men feel so ashamed because the environment, the patriarchy upholds that if you're a man, you're dominating, you're strong, you don't like to be pegged, you're a big boy, big boys don't cry. And then turns out that your fantasy is crying in front of a beautiful woman, and that does it for you. How are you going to tell your wife? Like, and I'm not one to have sympathy for men. I very often, I will say this, but I am very sympathetic to the fact that we live in an environment in which, women being sexually promiscuous is seen as awful. Men being vulnerable or submissive is seen as terrible. So you have all these factors coming in where people cannot live their own truth. And if you're not living your own truth, how are you going to be communicating anything if you're not secure enough in your value as a human being? And if you don't know how valuable you are as a human being because you are exactly the way you are, how can we expect them to communicate anything? We really, truly cannot. So I'm not condoning cheating. Please don't come for me. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying communicate with your partners. But I understand why these things happen. And it happens because if you live in an environment in which you are stigmatized, you are punished, every portrayal that you see of especially gay men in BDSM circles in media, for example, they all get killed or they all get, AIDS, or AIDS super stigmatized too. Like all of these portrayals in the media, all that they're telling you is you have to be normal. And if you're not normal, you're gonna die and your parents are gonna hate you. So it's very difficult. And all these communities, the gay community, the leather community, the BDSM community, we all have ways to communicate. It's like the gaydar, right? Like when I'm going out with a bunch of people and I don't know who's queer and who's not, there are the subtle cues that you're looking for. Like, are you or are you not? Can we have this conversation? and you will kind of like dip your toes and be like, gay rights, right?
Yeah.
Have you watched Queer Eye lately? What do you think of Jonathan Van Ness? This sort of stuff. And then, you know, you approach one another. And I think that the gay community is like and the leather community, which are kind of like very tight together. Yeah. They have such beautiful communication cues. Like there is a whole handkerchief code, depending on the color of the handkerchief that you have hanging out and where you have kind of like placed it. It will mean different things within the leather community. This is a code that's also common to lesbians, by the way. So yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's like the gay art of the fun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, instead of funning yourself, you have, I love it. So yeah, you know, we live in environments that do not entice us to talk about these things publicly. So we develop codes and you develop ways to communicate around it. Mm-hmm. And as interesting and as fascinating as that is, I think we would all be happier if the environment wasn't, you know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Do you know, I'm just thinking to myself, because he mentioned the same thing in terms of linguism, that you have your code of conduct in terms of communication, what you can and what you cannot do. And, you know, I found that quite interesting in terms of the key principles, and that you have to protect the community as well, which always. You have mentioned, you know, in terms of community. And hopefully anybody who's out there who didn't know that there were communities, like now, you know, it's affirmed.
So many. Yeah. You know, the internet, please, if you're queer, if you think you may be into BDSM, if you're neurodivergent, there is a community for you out there, and you may not have found it yet, but there is. Trust me, you will find your people. We are out there. And about protecting the communities, absolutely. It's like with the sex working community, we would never out a sex worker, no matter whether we think she's right or wrong, or they are right or they are wrong. Mm-hmm. You just don't do that. That's not a boundary that you overstep. Yeah. With the gay and the queer communities, it's very unlikely that you would out them to the police, for example, in particular in countries where it's still illegal to do, like, you know, public displays of affection, or homosexuality is illegal. If you're a member of the community and you outed someone, that would probably mean that you're banned from that community forever, because you've put the safety of the community at risk. Yeah. And you've exposed the community, a very vulnerable community, to the outside world. So with BDSM communities, it's also absolutely the same. And I think both sex working communities and BDSM, and even gay and queer communities, we tend to get, you know, curious people, journalists, or people who are just trying to figure it out. And we may not always be the nicest to the people that kind of like come sniffing around. It's not that we hate new people, it's that we don't want to be exposed, because that would mean that our safety and our lives are at risk.
I think that's a lovely close to that. However, if you're at home and want to know more and you feel you need some advice, feel free to get in contact. Details will be at the bottom. In terms of the last question.
Yes. Dun, dun, dun.
Do you think, in your own opinion, and it's not because you're here, but in your own opinion, that PhD Hardtalk is benefiting the communities in which we conduct the research, and also benefiting the researchers they themselves, in your own opinion?
In my own opinion, I think so. I mean, I think the idea of having an online space where researchers can connect, like you've connected me to two people that I had no idea that research existed. That is already so very valuable to me. And I think that uplifting voices is really the thing to do. Like, I feel very, very honored that you wanted to speak to me, and thank you so much for giving me this space. So yeah, I think it's absolutely useful. It's wonderful. Keep up, keep doing it. Let's get more people listening. Let's get more people watching. People need to know. The people need to know about this.
Yeah, no, I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. So in terms of the next steps, remember, hashtag project dissemination to the world. Let's educate each other, share knowledge, be happy. That's the sign I've learned.
Hashtag all the way in. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
Elevated. Now it's my time to shine. Yeah, let's go.